The Burning Crusade Anniversary Edition is now well underway. The Dark Portal has opened, the first arena season has started, and tons of people have cleared the first raid tier. By accounts, there is a lot of people playing this expansion, as we will see later. Yet at the same time, if you've been paying attention, there have been some very familiar problems that have started to make their return. And these are issues which I've seen again and again when new versions of Classic have released. So I thought it'd be worth talking about how they keep reoccurring. That being said, this video isn't here to put a dampener on TBC Anniversary. There is some real positive news to cover as well. So let's make a start on this. The first issue that will hit a significant number of players who are jumping into pogs or running with guilds they don't fully know will be the prominence of groups hard reserving items due to GDKP being banned. So if you aren't aware, maybe you haven't played in a while, here's a quick breakdown of what that really means. GDKP is simply a loot system where items drop in a raid environment primarily, and then they're auctioned off with gold, and the person with the most gold gets the item. Hard reserve, on the other hand, is when a leader of a group, be it in a raid or a dungeon, says that a certain item is hard reserved, meaning if that item drops, it automatically goes to the designated player and nobody else can roll on it. So GDKP runs have been banned on Anniversary, Hardcore and Season of Discovery realms in the NA and EU regions, and this policy has been in place for quite some time now really, and Blizzard have held their line on it. The reasons they've cited include two main things: that GDKP directly encouraged people to real money trade, and the second reason, which Blizzard has directly stated, is that GDKP's existence erodes traditional guilds and people getting together on a weekly basis to run content. I don't know if you played WoW at the start of Season of Discovery when everyone was running the Black Fathoms Deep raid, but essentially the entire chat was just non-stop spam of GDKP and people were running a ton of ults through that place every single day. You really didn't need a guild whatsoever, and as much as it got a lot of people into raiding, it was just a much different scene than what Classic is usually known to be. But really banning GDKP just opened up other problems, because oftentimes in hard reserve groups now, people aren't just reserving one or two items, they're reserving the materials, the recipes, or they'll be going into a dungeon and saying, right, anything anyone doesn't need, I'm going to take for myself. But here's the thing though about hard reserves: if you put the effort in to assemble a raid group or a dungeon, then you're genuinely entitled to set the boundaries to what you want them to be. If you've spent all that time organizing a caravan, finding tanks, the healers, chasing the right class balancing, coordinating attunements, making sure everyone's done their loot sheet and so on and so forth, then at the end of the dungeon or raid, you really want something for yourself. You want to get something out of that effort that you've put into it. And if you were spamming a dungeon in the hopes of a certain item dropping, you just wouldn't invite somebody who would roll against you. It wouldn't make any sense whatsoever to do that. So as much as I understand why hard reserve is there's just something which is a bit off-putting about it, I think is the best way I can say it. Part of Classic has typically been that everyone can get the best gear. You don't need to be a Giga, Mythic Raider or a Mythic Plus player to get the best items. In raid environments, I think it's fine to join a guild and gradually get BIS items from the fairly easy content, and it is fairly easy, but dungeons tend to have a much shorter lifespan. Normally in TBC, people would spam dungeons for reputation, but attunements are all account wide now, so that being a thing is going to last for a much shorter period of time than it usually does. And I think it being a re-release is another reason why we're seeing more hard reserves than we typically do. People know all the best stuff in the game now really well. The solution really for dungeons would be something like an automatic group assembler that puts you in a group of other players, but you still have to travel to the instance yourself. The benefit wouldn't just be about the loot either. Right now, if you're queuing for a dungeon as, say, a balance druid, and there is also a mage in the group finder and somebody else sees a mage, well, let's be honest, the majority of the time people are going to pick the mage because it's just a massively better class. It's not even close. That is, unless you already have a mage or you come up with some other reason. Obviously though, this approach wouldn't work so much for raiding. Blizzard already disallowed GDKP because in their own words, it started to replace normal raiding guilds. So they aren't about to allow you to queue with random people for a raid. And I've seen enough LFR in retail over the years to know that this isn't a particularly good system either, even if you dumb it down to the max. I do wonder though if there's some kind of possibility that a currency-based system could exist within the game for bidding for items in raid environments. Imagine you could bid for items with badges in TBC, for example. It would bring on a whole host of other problems, but at least then you're bidding with your time spent in the game really. Or imagine if Blizzard just go for the super hands-off approach. You have one realm where anything goes. There's boosting, there's GDKP, Blizzard sell boost, Blizzard have the WoW token, it's just full on shameless. First global is the credit card gaming. And then you have another server where none of that goes, no boost, no GDKP, no WoW token or anything. I think it would be interesting, and the server with all the services would be more popular, I can tell you that right now. And the reason it would be more popular is because people would play a ton of different alts there. Each of those servers would have a much different vibe as well. Either way, I just wanted to bring up these two things because whenever there's a new version of Classic, they are always a discussion point. What do you think? Are they just non-issues? This is how the game is and it's fine as it is? Or would you like something different to be done here in the future? Another problem with TBC Anniversary, which I cannot believe we are seeing, is that some people are using gear score. Gear score is simply a number attributed to the items you're wearing which tally up to a total score. It's supposed to, at a glance, give people some idea of your gear level. Now in future expansions, when you get a fresh reset of gear essentially every patch, this more or less happened from Wrath of the Lich King and beyond, this system somewhat worked, though it could still be cheesed. In TBC though, this system is really dumb. The most obvious example I can think of is the Hunter Beastlord set. This 4-piece is something they use over tier 4 because the 4 set bonus gives them a bunch of armor penetration, and that is just better than other items that they can get. And because it's blue gear, it's going to have a lower gear score. Similarly with Shadow Priest, the main stat that they care about this phase is just raw spell power. If you see a Shadow Priest wearing green gear that just says of Shadow Power on it, they are wearing BIS items. These may not look like good items, the Shadow Priest may have next to no stamina or intellect, but they are itemizing in the best way possible to provide mana regeneration for their party and for their own damage. Again, this will be green gear, so their gear score will look really low even though they're wearing what are BIS items. This is one of those early World of Warcraft design quirks that made gearing more interesting. Gear requires context. Different classes and specs care about different stats or set bonuses. So if you see people using gear score or asking you what your gear score is, oftentimes you're better just explaining to them what kind of gear you're in roughly. Another problem we've seen is kind of old at this point in time, but it's really started to rear its head again, and I think it will be an issue for future releases too, given that I now believe it will become the standard for WoW Classic, and that is regarding the Mega Realms. Did you know WoW's original realm infrastructure was built for somewhere between 2,000 or 3,000 concurrent players at a time? If you had a server with that population nowadays, people would call it dead. But that used to be the limit. Our anniversary realms are mega servers by comparison. They will have well over 10 times that amount of people logged in at the same time, probably right now. And with the mega servers comes along layering. This was initially the solution to overpopulation that Blizzard worked on at the start of Classic. And Blizzard constantly have to do this balancing act with mega realms. On one hand, there needs to be enough layers to where the game is playable in the open world. You can farm things, you can do quests, and you can gather resources. But if there's too many layers, then the open world just feels completely dead and the game doesn't feel as alive as it should do. It's a difficult situation. Now, as much as I don't think mega realms and layering are going to go anywhere, and it is, for the way we play the game now, a fine solution, what does need more specific attention is the respawn rates and availability of items in the open world. At times now, if you run into a quest that has a long respawn time, it can be super painful. Again, you could just be on a bad layer and it's really busy, but you're not really going to know that. And just rolling the dice with another layer doesn't really feel that great either. It's like you're gaming the whole system in a really non-intuitive way. But for the future of mega realms, mob spawn rates and the availability of nodes in the open world both do need a look at. Next up we have PvP, and as per usual, something is broken with Arena. I swear this happens every single time. So for Anniversary they changed the format. Now everyone's personal rating starts at 1500, and if you drop below that rating you can reset it by spending some gold each week. Aside from your personal personal or current rating, you also have your MMR or matchmaking rating, and your MMR determines the estimated skill level for who you should play against. But what people have noticed is happening is they'll be resetting their rating to 1500 and they'll be winning 10 or so points or losing 18, and it appears as though people's starting MMR is significantly lower than their current rating, and this is why on average you're losing a lot more points than you're gaining. Because for example, if everyone's current rating is 1500 and everyone's MMR begins at 1000, then if you're losing to another team, the game thinks you're losing against players who are significantly worse than you at Arena. This is why it's punishing you by making you lose a ton of points. Now this is probably a thing where your MMR will improve over time, but you're just going to have to keep playing until it begins to even out. If this is indeed the case and why this is happening, this is going to be very disencouraging for newer players and really not what PvP needs. If people play some games and they keep losing way more than they're winning, they're just going to think the system is broken and stop playing. PvP participation is already going to be pretty difficult because there will be a lot of very seasoned players playing the game at the moment, and it really didn't need this extra barrier to entry. This for some teams will even make getting 1700 so you can acquire all the items from arena ratings seem difficult. Honor from Battlegrounds is also worth addressing because the amount you're gaining is just really bad. I've talked about this so much across various videos, but the barrier to entry for PvP and Classic has always been too high in my opinion, and especially on a version of the game such as Anniversary where we already know all the content is going to be out by winter, that it just doesn't make sense to hold people back with the original rates. For me, they should just boost up the Honor from Battlegrounds and make them feel more worth playing in general. There are some open world objectives too, such as the Terracar Spirit Towers, and thinking back to a TBC in 2021, I remember people doing this as well. They would all just fly between the objectives and there would be zero PvP happening. Not particularly engaging either. Overall, maybe that Sign of Honor thing we had going in the pre-patch could make a return, maybe Blizzard? Just a thought. But with all that covered, there has been some really positive news as well for TBC Anniversary. So according to data tracked on ironforge.pro, approximately 242,000 non-unique characters raided during the first week of TBC Anniversary. Just to put that in context, TBC Classic in 2021 had around 253,000 raiders 2 weeks post-launch. So Anniversary being the first, well, re-release of TBC, if that makes sense, is doing extremely well numbers-wise. This is very surprising to me. I didn't think it would be doing this well. Part of that explanation is going to be the level 58 boost though, let's be honest. When TBC Realms came back online after maintenance, Blizzard's development team tweeted out that boosts were going out at thousands per minute. That's an enormous volume, and it tells you that a lot of people were sitting on the sidelines, not really playing vanilla, waiting for their chance to hop back through the Dark Portal. And as much as the boost did get a lot of the people back into the game, I just want to say that at the end of the day, Blizzard are always in control of how fast the leveling experience will be. They could have added Joyous Journeys, they could have given everyone that rallying cry of the Dragon Slayer buff, which everyone had for a while on Anniversary Realms. Instead, they left leveling as it usually is and then just sold the answer to the problem. And once you've boosted, you'll find this expansion is still pretty front-loaded in terms of gold costs from professions, flying, and so on. And I'm just saying, I'm surprised they didn't just also drop in the WoW token too already. I don't think they do it mid-expansion now, but if Wrath Anniversary happens, it's 100% getting the WoW token. For me, integrity things like Blizzard selling a boost or WoW token matter a lot more when it's on a realm that has a long-term plan and a reason to keep playing it. TBC Anniversary, if you look at it right now, is doing amazingly well, but the future of it long-term is just a question mark. We have no idea what's going to be happening. So on this type of realm, if Blizzard want to sell you the ability to skip content, then that's fine, but I just have to hope this won't be referenced as a success overall, and that it should therefore be included into different versions of the game, specifically Classic Plus, but we'll see on that, won't we? And as good as the initial numbers are for TBC, there are a few more things worth bringing up too. One of those is the question of tourist players. Again, not that it's a bad thing checking out an expansion for a brief period of time, especially with the convenience of the boost, but Midnight's early access just started and the expansion will be launching shortly. I think it'll be reasonable to expect that some people were checking out a bit of TBC before the new retail expansion dropped. That being said, Holly Longdale did do an interview fairly recently, and she said there isn't a significant crossover between retail and classic players, so maybe this really isn't going to be much of a concern. Another potential issue for TBC is how Blizzard has changed the attunement system. Now again, on the surface level it's great, raids, you have to do your achievements once, they're one and done, and then you don't worry about them again. It's fantastic if you've already done them and you're already playing alts. However, if you're coming in as a latecomer to TBC or starting a later patch, people just aren't going to be running heroic dungeons anymore. The reputation grinds that used to pull people back through those dungeons to get achievements done on alts will be dramatically reduced. Imagine if you've got your achievements done now and you're playing an alt. When you hit 70, are you going to start running heroic dungeons, or are you going to the auction house, throwing some gold on some BOEs, and then going into post-nerf Karazhan, which is a loot pinata? I think we know the answer to that. Given the duration of TBC Anniversary is going to be so short, they may actually have to look at removing achievement requirements even earlier than they typically would, due to the lack of people revisiting the content that they require. And in regards to raid difficulty, well, we've had tier 4 out now, and it turns out that post-nerf is indeed pretty easy. Many players would say the raiding content is easier than heroic dungeons, and I think that was very much expected. Blizzard initially were going to plan to go into TBC Anniversary and do absolutely everything post-nerf. They did receive quite a bit of feedback on that, and at this point in time, the last communication we heard about the future of TBC was that Blizzard are deciding whether to do it post or pre-nerf. And as much as there has been some disappointment with the difficulty level of the content so far in TBC, it is extremely popular. I mean, we saw the numbers on Ironforge.pro, a ton of people are interacting with the game. It's nearly as successful as TBC was in 2021, which is absolutely crazy to me. Reminder that TBC in 2021 also had a boost. This isn't something unique to Anniversary. And historically with Classic, when the content starts getting excessively difficult, people stop playing. And a post-nerf tier 4 into a pre-nerf tier 5 will be an absolutely massive jump up in difficulty. So at this point, I'm pretty sure Blizzard are going to do the rest of TBC post-nerf. I think Blizzard always wanted TBC to be this way based on previous data-driven raiding numbers, as well as it being the most hands-off approach. I fully believe they just wanted TBC Anniversary out as a simple re-release, and that Blizzard don't want to interact with it that much post-launch, as their development teams are full on working on Classic Plus, and just sending everything post-nerf was the easiest way to achieve that. Whereas if they go pre-nerf, they'll have to set everything back to that original state, make sure it's working, test it more, and then people will end up complaining and they'll eventually have to set it back to post-nerf again. It's just adding more work that I don't think they want to do. And for what it's worth, Sunwell will still be fairly challenging. If you remember Sunwell being easy, it was in the Wrath of the Lich King pre-patch, but that's because our classes were super overpowered then. Only Muru saw significant nerfs during this raid. The rest of it will be pretty difficult, so if you want difficulty, at least there's the Sunwell. So that's where things stand at the moment. TBC Anniversary is dealing with some classic problems which we see time and again. None of these are particularly new, and that's kind of the point, because I'm sure that they will rear their heads again in future releases. Are there any learning points to be taken here, and would you have things be different? But on the positive side, the raiding numbers are real and a lot of people are enjoying this expansion, which is of course fantastic news as well. With this many people playing, surely Blizzard are going to do an error server this time around, right? Anyways, that's about all I've got for today. Hope you're enjoying TBC. Let me know your thoughts on everything I've gone over in the comments down below. And as always, thank you all so much for watching and listening in, and I'll see you all in the next one very soon.